So, whatever happened to Jason from Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood? Let's find out.
Movies, music, and monsters.
Hey guys, Dan Monroe here talking about movies, music, and monsters. Now, before we get started, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Squarespace, but more on that later. Jason Voorhees, one of cinema's most iconic and ruthless horror slashers that, over the years, has not only become a literal part of the history of the Hollywood horror genre, but also sent the loving and innocent girlfriends from our past horrifyingly reaching for the safety and comfort of our overly enthusiastic arms in the back rows of sleazy movie theaters all over the world. But come on, folks, let's be honest, nobody watches a Friday the 13th movie for the brilliant storyline or the awe-inspiring acting performances. We watch it for the outlandish kills and as much TNA as we can possibly get. So grab your foot-long bloodied machete, your favorite Jason mask from your neighborhood spirit store, and a bucket of stale popcorn, and let's dive in. This particular 7th installment of the Friday the 13th franchise, The New Blood from 1988, was a direct sequel to Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, from 1986. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Part 7? Really? Why Part 7? Well, 7 is actually a pretty lucky number, and there is another cool reason. But we'll get to that in just a bit.
Warning, warning, danger, danger!
Yes? What is it, Robot?
I have to admit, I have never been the biggest fan of these 1980s slasher films.
Okay, and why is that?
Michael Myers scares me.
This isn't Michael Myers. That was Halloween. This is Friday the 13th. Jason!
The guy with the hockey mask?
Bingo.
I still don't like it. The guy gives me the creeps, and all the blood and gore makes my sensors queasy.
Okay, but what about all the hot babes in these films? Well,
I do like the hot babes.
I figured. Generally considered this time as a supernatural slasher film, Part 7, The New Blood, was directed by John Carl Buechler and starred Lar Park Lincoln as Tina, Kevin Blair as Nick Rogers, and the super cool character actor Terry Kaiser as Dr. Chris Cruz, who, in my opinion, is the true villain of this particular installment. If you've seen the film, you know what I mean. Now, for those of you who have never seen Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, it's essentially the continuing story of Jason Voorhees, once again returning to wreak havoc on the inhabitants of Crystal Lake, but this time going up against I guess you'd call her a troubled young lady who, when she was younger, accidentally or intentionally killed her own father at, of course, Crystal Lake, with powers emulating from her mind, and now those dormant telekinetic abilities suddenly re-emerge, and believe me, all hell literally breaks loose. I don't think I necessarily have to give any spoiler warnings. I mean, it's a Friday the 13th film. Jason hacking up a bunch of teenagers, pretty much everybody dies. So yeah, there you go. A lot of so-called couch critics, and, well, actually even real critics for that matter, tend to put this particular film down due to the fact that it's just so different from the other films in the franchise. But in a way, I actually kind of appreciate that because the writers and director at least attempted to take the story in a somewhat new direction. I mean, come on, let's face it. There's really only so much you can do, and I'm pretty sure this franchise, like over the years, did just about everything they could to keep Jason hacking up those sexy young teenagers, but I digress. This is really quite interesting. Originally, Part 7 was intended to be a crossover film between Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger because, financially, the box office profits were rapidly diminishing with each Friday the 13th sequel, where, on the other hand, the Nightmare on Elm Street films were grossing nearly twice as much as the Jason films. But the idea was eventually dropped after New Line Cinema and Paramount just couldn't come to an agreement, at least at that time. Later on, we obviously did get Freddy versus Jason, for better or for worse. Associate producer Barbara Sox, who was determined to make a film that was unlike any other Friday the 13th movie, was the one who originally came up with the concept of a Jason versus Carrie film, which the studio thought was an interesting idea, but only if it could be done in a more respectable way than the other previous entries in the series. So that was it. Jason versus telekinetics. I can't believe I actually just said that, but that's honest to God the general plot of this film, and like I said, good for them. Something unique, something different, which this film certainly ended up being. Very much like George Lucas did while filming Return of the Jedi, he called the film Blue Harvest, something directors would do to keep production costs down, to make the suppliers think they're not actually selling stuff to a Star Wars movie. Well, this movie did the same thing and was given the title of Birthday Bash, which certainly would not make me think in the least that this was another chapter in a gruesome horror film. One thing about this film that was really quite interesting, and quite frankly, I've never heard of this happening before, John Buechler was not only the director of the film, but also the head makeup artist. The entire production of this film was written, filmed, edited, promoted, and released within 7 months. 7 freaking months! Are you kidding me? Filming took place only from October to November 1987 in Baldwin County, Alabama, and also a little bit more in Mobile, Alabama in February of 1988. This film marks the first of 4 legendary appearances by the incredible Kane Hodder as Jason Voorhees, who was coincidentally the only actor ever to reprise the role in this entire franchise.
I had done a movie called Prison. They asked me to play a character at the end that was in a full makeup. The makeup effects guy that was doing that movie hired me the following year to play Jason in the Friday the 13th movie he was directing, Part 7. There has been other guys that played Jason before me, but they did 1 movie each. I did 4 of the films in a row, so I kind of claim that hockey mask more. I have far more kills than anyone else.
Kind of interesting, the Jason mask in this film was cast from the same molds as the original mask from Friday the 13th Part 3 in 1982 and only slightly modified for this film. This film is also distinct in the series for the simple fact that this movie serves as the longest time that Jason ever appeared on screen unmasked. There are so many awesome fan websites out there all about the Friday the 13th franchise, but you know what? There's always room for one more. So if any of you guys would like to create your own website, let me introduce you to today's sponsor, Squarespace. If you've ever thought about it, having your own website to promote a brand, sell a product, anything really, well, Squarespace is a freaking awesome company to help you do just that. Super quick, super simple. One thing that makes it so easy is a brand new guided design system called Squarespace Blueprint. You can choose from super professional looking layouts, then personalize them to your own needs, automatically optimized for every device. And if you're selling something, it's even easier with tons of really powerful payment tools where you can accept credit cards, PayPal, Apple Pay, making checkout seamless and simple. You can upload your own video content to your own video library, sell exclusive content like memberships, courses, music, or ebooks, purchase the domain and launch your very own website all in no time, all in one place. It's super simple, super convenient. Simply check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and even better, you can save 10% off your first purchase of a domain or website by visiting squarespace.com/Dan Monroe. And now, back to Friday the 13th. Okay, now I've seen a lot of Friday the 13th movies in my day, but I really think there was something not only different, but also a little bit special about Jason in this particular installment. To me, he seemed not only bigger in stature, which he clearly was, but also a little bit more like Michael Myers, stalker type. All the kills take place at night, in the dark, in the woods. But more than that, just the way Kane Hodder approached the character, I mean, if you can call a homicidal maniac a character, with the way he would do the quick neck turns and the ominous walking pattern, the breathing, which was also an addition to the character in this film, just something a little bit different for this installment for the Jason character that I thought was really, I don't know, quite effective and more than a little bit memorable. And this guy was dedicated to his craft. He actually set a cinematic record for the longest uninterrupted on-screen controlled burn in Hollywood history in a scene where Tina causes the furnace to shoot flames at Jason. Hodder was actually on fire for a full 40 seconds, which was a record at the time. You know, even though there was very little on-screen blood in this film, it definitely had its share of kills, that's for sure. 16 of them, I believe, from beginning to end. Well, let's find out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and finally 16. That just about does it. And this film also contains one of the most iconic Jason kills in the entire franchise, the legendary sleeping bag massacre. I mean, can't you just see a couple of guys in the writing room trying to come up with that idea? The sleeping bag, yeah, that's it. Let's have him kill her in a sleeping bag. Perfect. Lunch, 1 hour. According to director John Buechler, the film had to be submitted 9 times to the Motion Picture Association of America before finally given an R rating, making it arguably the most heavily censored film in the entire Friday the 13th series, after tons and tons of shots were literally hacked out, no pun intended, simply to avoid an X rating. The studio executives from Paramount claim that they destroyed all the outtakes and cut scenes that were removed, making it pretty much impossible, sadly, to ever have a director's cut of this film. As far as the soundtrack goes, musically, most of the score that we hear in the film is recycled music from previous Friday the 13th films by Henry Manfredini, even though composer Fred Mollen did compose some new music scattered throughout the film. Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, opened on Friday, May 13th, 1988, in just under 2,000 theaters, and was, as they kind of expected, not really that big of a hit, but it eventually went on to earn almost $20 million at the U.S. box office, placing it only number 53 on the list of that year's top earning motion pictures, more or less contributing again to the decline in revenue for this entire franchise. Critically, Roger Ebert gave the film only 1 out of 4 stars, claiming, and I quote, "Its weak finale and predictable killings, as well as a perceived misogynistic subtext to the entire Friday the 13th series, makes it fairly unwatchable in my opinion." Well, thanks for that wonderful outpouring of creative criticism, Roger. Friday the 13th, The New Blood was released on both VHS and Betamax back in the late 1980s and early 90s, DVD in 2009, and finally in glorious high definition in the Friday the 13th 8-movie collection limited edition Steelbook Blu-ray set in 2021. Okay, but whatever happened to the really cool props and costumes from the film? I mean, where is Jason now? Well, Kane Hodder's original Jason costume and hockey mask surprisingly still exist and were owned by collector Mario Kerner for quite some time and displayed in the Friday the 13th Props Museum. As far as all the other stuff, the original Hero Axe prop from the film remained in director John Buechler's personal collection for over 25 years. This really cool Jason Voorhees bust was previously owned by Planet Hollywood, and the foam latex headpiece was personally worn by Kane Hodder during promotional appearances for the film in 1988, including the famous People magazine shoot, which was the only time all of the major 1980s slasher killers were united in a single photo. Come on, how cool is that? Here is the outfit that Kane Hodder wore during the infamous fire scene, still in quite the amazing condition and simply miraculous to see that this piece still exists today. Now here we see the only original pair of Jason hands currently known to exist, again previously residing in the collection of director John Buechler. And this is really awesome. Back in 2001 or 2002, I can't remember exactly which, there was a Friday the 13th reunion at the Mad Monster Party in Carolina, featuring members of the cast, and this is awesome. John Buechler did his legendary Jason makeup one more time on Kane Hodder specifically for this amazing event. And speaking of cool, I am very excited to announce right here that I will be attending this year's LA Comic-Con on the weekend of October 4th through the 6th in Los Angeles. This will be my first time ever, not only appearing at a convention as a guest, but also the first time I've ever been to California, for that matter. I'll be sitting at a booth with my friends from Block 4 Studios who will be doing some really amazing prop restorations right there on site, and also revealing for the very first time an incredible statue of Jason from Part 7, The New Blood, scanned directly from the original makeup prop. I am both excited and, more importantly, honored and humbled to be a part of this incredible celebration at this year's LA Comic-Con. So if you get a chance and you happen to be there, definitely swing by and say hello. Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, was not only an integral yet somewhat divisive chapter in the Friday the 13th franchise, but has certainly found a place with many fans within the horror genre who still love and cherish this movie to this day, paving the way for other great slasher films in the late 90s and early 2000s like Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, Blood Moon, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, Jason Goes to Hell, Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, House of Horrors, The Gates of Hell, and so many more. We could be here all day, but that, my friends, is the topic of another video. I hope you guys enjoyed that deep dive into Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, and if you did, and you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a whole bunch of new videos coming up really soon that I know you guys are just gonna dig. And please feel free to stop back anytime as we, together, continue our conversation on movies, music, and monsters.
Movies, music, and